Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Jason Bolton, Vice President of Community Partnerships and Admissions for the Help Group, and I'll be moderating today's webcast, Positive Psychology, a Therapeutic Approach for Adolescents and Parents. Since August of 2020, we have offered a series of webcasts that have covered distance learning during the closure of school, how parents can help their students at home, social skills, the mental health impact of the pandemic on our youth, the benefits of psychotherapy for autistic individuals, the intersection between autism spectrum disorder and LGBTQAI+, and more. You can find each of those webcasts, as well as a virtual open house of all of our schools, at www.thehelpgroup.org/webcasts. For almost 50 years, the Help Group has prided itself in creating new programs responsive to emerging needs within the communities that we serve. In recent years alone, we have launched a new school for students with learning disabilities or autism who are interested in science, engineering, technology, and math. A coaching program for young adults who need support and guidance to enter college or the workforce. A groundbreaking social support and mental health program for young people who identify as LGBTQAI+. A prevention and aftercare program to ameliorate child maltreatment in Los Angeles. And an early detection program for adolescents and young adults experiencing concerning psychiatric symptoms designed to prevent their escalation into a fully diagnosable disorder. It is in that same spirit of responsiveness, recognizing the increasing mental health needs in our communities and the difficulties that many are experiencing in accessing needed services, that the Help Group has recently opened the Lumina Counseling Center. Lumina offers health insurance funded and private pay individual, group, couples, and family therapy to persons of all ages, in addition to psychoeducational evaluations and diagnostic assessments. Our goal is to meet our clients where they are at and build a strong, trusting, and compassionate therapeutic alliance with those seeking our support. At our core, Lumina Counseling believes that everyone has the right to be heard and to be guided to live their best possible life. Within our new Lumina Counseling Center, we aim to provide empathic, affirming services to everyone who is interested in the support that counseling provides. We are here to help people of all ages and with any of the challenges many are experiencing, especially these days, including those who are neurodivergent. I want to acknowledge that we meet together today with heavy hearts. The recent unimaginable tragedy in Buffalo and yesterday's senseless shooting in Texas are undoubtedly weighing on all of us. We obviously had this webcast organized far in advance of both of these atrocities, and it is important that we acknowledge that this topic today deals much more broadly with mental health in general, rather than specifically on the trauma that incidents like this create in those close to the tragedy, as well as those of us who feel the pain as members of our national community. Nonetheless, please know that we are here to help you and your family should you need us. Please reach out to us for therapeutic services, to speak to a group in your community, or to help in any other way that seems fit. Contact numbers for Lumina and the Help Group will be provided during this presentation. Additionally, we will put up a number of resources in the chat that we gave to all of our students of our schools yesterday that may be of benefit in times like these. I see that Erica has just done that, so you'll see those resources in the chat now. Fred Gutenberg, father of Jamie Gutenberg, who was killed in the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018, offered this advice that he received from his rabbi in the wake of his personal grief to the parents of yesterday's tragic losses. We don't move on, we move forward. Today, we are going to attempt to do just that. Not yet to move on, but indeed to move forward. With that, I would like to tell you about today's panelists who provide services for Lumina, who will lead us in this important discussion about positive psychology. Heather Humphrey is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She holds master's degrees in both applied psychology, with an emphasis in mental health systems advocacy and inclusion, and clinical psychology, with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. She is the current state chair of the Business, Education, and Labor Committee as part of the California Department of Education's Workability Program. Heather also sits on the executive board of the Mayor of Santa Clarita's Office on Employment for Individuals with Disabilities and is an active board member of the Domestic Abuse Center. Heather has worked with a variety of populations. She was responsible for the day-to-day operation of one of Los Angeles County's largest domestic violence emergency centers and the LA County Domestic Violence Hotline, which averages approximately 5,500 calls per month. She has worked in school settings with children with severe emotional challenges and was a program liaison with the Department of Mental Health. Never one to shy away from a challenge, Heather worked with formerly incarcerated individuals and started one of the first art-based therapeutic programs for court-mandated clients in the state. Through the Trevor Project, Heather worked with LGBTQIA+ youth and young adults. They're at risk for suicide and taught potential adoptive and foster parents through the PS MAP program for the Department of Children and Family Services. Heather has provided training to the LAPD, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and countless graduate and undergraduate students. She has provided clinical supervision to students from UCLA, USC, CSUN, CSLA, Antioch, and Pepperdine, and has addressed the Senate Subcommittee on Housing and Urban Development as it related to funding for low-income and homeless populations. She is currently working on an animated feature film about domestic violence called Jennifer 42. Wow, that's a lot, Heather. Now that you've heard a little bit about Heather, we would like to know a little bit about you. You should now see a short pop-up poll show up on your screen. If you could just answer those questions, we will get to know a little bit about you. And I will summarize our audience a little bit so we know who's here, and we'll move on from there. I will let you know that once you have answered and this is complete, that you'll need to X out of that screen. So you'll hit the X on the top right. Otherwise, it will sit there in front of our faces the entire webcast. Someone did ask in the chat to make sure this was a webcast. Yes, we cannot see or hear you, so no worries about your camera or if you're talking to your gardener or whatever. All right, we have got a number of responses coming in. I always like to know whether anyone has attended any of our webcasts, and we're pretty evenly split. So we have about 50% of you who have, and about that same amount, obviously, who this is your first webcast. Welcome. We ask if you're a parent, teacher, mental health provider, or other, and we've got about a 33% split between parent, mental health provider, and other, with a number of teachers here as well. And folks are still pretty concerned about their own mental health, and others, with about 2/3 of people saying that their concern is increased. And then we're asking about how familiar are you already, and good to see that there's a lot of people who still need a lot to learn about this positive psychology topic. So again, great to have you all, especially those who are joining us here this first time. Don't forget to click out of that, hit the X button in the top right to click out. Okay. We are honored that you have chosen to spend another hour with us. For those of you joining us for the first time, let me tell you a little bit about the Help Group. Among other social and mental health services serving the entirety of Los Angeles County, including outpatient mental health and intensive family intervention programs, and the Lumina Counseling Center that I introduced earlier, the Help Group also operates 14 non-public schools in LA County for students with autism spectrum disorders, learning disabilities, ADHD, developmental delays, and emotional challenges. We contract with more than 80 local education authorities meaning school districts or charter schools who act as school districts, to provide special education and related services to more than 1,100 students. During this presentation, you may use the chat function to present questions that we'd like the panelists to address. We will have a Q&A section at the end of the webcast, and we will attempt to answer as many of those questions as we can. From doing several webcasts, we know that we will not be able to get to every question. So if there are a number of questions that we didn't get to, we will follow up an email to all registrants with answers to the questions that we weren't able to get to today. So now I have the great pleasure of introducing our expert speaker this morning, Miss Heather Humphrey. You are muted.
I was muted, so let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. I'm extra now excited to talk to you because I did that once before. As Jason said, I am one of the staff therapists here at Lumina Counseling. One of the things that is most wonderful about Lumina is that there are so many of us that have so many different sort of ideas about how we address different things. So if you've seen any of our previous webcasts, you've most definitely seen some of my amazing colleagues who may have presented things about cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, trauma-focused therapy, play therapy. It goes on and on and on. And so Lumina has really kind of cultivated a group of us that have different ideas, different approaches, so that we're able to serve pretty much everybody. So it's such a pleasure to be able to talk to you today and to represent Lumina. So just a little bit more about me. Unlike some of my colleagues, I am an existential humanistic therapist, which means that I work with clients to discover their own uniqueness and acquire a greater awareness of themselves and the world around them. I assist clients by teaching them to see their resistance and to have a more meaningful existence. So my approach distinguishes itself a little bit from other approaches by including the importance of each individual's experience, as well as a concern for positive growth rather than pathology. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, okay. So like most psychodynamic people, I love a good metaphor. So this is a lotus flower. The lotus flower has actually been around for quite literally thousands of years. It was very important to the ancient Egyptians. When you see depictions of Moses going down the Nile River through the reeds, you usually see lotus flowers. Lotus is very important both to Hindu and Buddhist religions as well, so it's a pretty well-known plant. What a lot of people don't know, because when you look at it, it's beautiful, is that lotus flowers have to grow in the most grungy, gross, icky water you could possibly imagine. In fact, they have to start life in mud. Now, many of us have probably felt like at some point in our life, we're kind of weighed down by something. Life doesn't look so great. Maybe getting to the surface of wherever you're going looks murky and icky, and it can be scary. But once we grow beyond the mud and the icky water, you reach the sunshine. And that is the part of the flower that we see all the time. So everyone who's sitting here today, doesn't matter how old you are, what your experiences are, everyone has had an experience like a lotus flower where you've had to grow, and sometimes growing can be uncomfortable, but you still did it. And that's sort of the thrust of positive psychology, is really focusing on not just the struggle, but the end result. Let's see the next slide. So what is positive psychology? Positive psychology really is a empirically based scientific study of strengths that individuals and communities have to help them thrive. Originally, when we looked at psychology as a brand new field, it really focused on three things. It focused on giftedness, it focused on quality of life, and it focused on pathology. Right after World War II, lots of folks were coming home with all kinds of challenges, and the shift really had to move from those three things to pathology. How can we help people who are hurting right now in this moment? And so the positive aspects of psychology sort of got lost along the way, until about the 1960s or 70s, when Dr. Martin Seligman really sort of started bringing positive psychology back to the forefront. So this is really a belief, a system about helping people lead meaningful and fulfilling lives, whatever that looks like to you, and to cultivate the best within themselves and enhance their experiences of love, work, play, and self-satisfaction. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so positive psychology really is pretty simple in this structure. We're looking at three kind of pillars of what holds up the theory. The first one is positive experiences. So we're looking at what experiences has someone had in the past that made them feel content? What are experiences someone's having in the present that make them feel happy? And what experiences could someone have? What plans could someone have for the future that would give them hope? So we look at sort of a broader range and then kind of narrow that in. We look at individual traits. Every sentient being on our planet has the capacity for some of these things. So we're looking at strengths like the capacity for love or work, courage, compassion, creativity, curiosity, integrity, self-knowledge, and wisdom. And by cultivating these individual traits, then we can translate that to a larger system. So we're also looking at how can we use positive psychology to foster strengths for better communities. That might look like social justice. That might look like responsibility, civility, parenting, work ethics, leadership, teamwork. All of those things happen on a much larger level when the participants feel like they have a voice in what's going on and they have a part of that direction. So we're looking at how can we build up an environment, an individual, and a group for success. Let's look at the next one. So lots of times when I talk about positive psychology, everyone's like, okay, so what are you saying? I'm supposed to be happy all the time? No, of course not. It would be, first of all, I think impossible to be happy all the time, because if you really were happy all the time, would you really know it? Because you'd have nothing to compare it to. So the phrase happiness, as one of my colleagues at Lumina pointed out, can seem a little outdated. So we can substitute subjective well-being instead of happiness, joy, awe, satisfaction, commitment. Any of those things can mean the same as happiness. And while happiness has many definitions, it's often described as involving positive emotions and satisfaction. So that's what happiness is. Positive psychology, on the other hand, is a scientific study on the strengths and virtues that enable individuals and communities to thrive. It's not just everyone's going to walk around and feel happy and the world's going to be a better place. It's grounded in empirical and replicable scientific study. These are things that aren't just individual. We're looking at larger themes that apply to lots of people in lots of different ways. I think it's also important to remember, particularly if you are working with clients either as a teacher or a therapist, happiness looks different for different cultures. It looks different for different people. And so someone else's subjective experience, their subjective well-being, doesn't have to look like mine, as long as it's fulfilling for them, if that makes sense. So now we're looking at how happiness and authenticity are the same and how they're different. So let's look at happiness a little bit more. Erica, do you mind? Next slide. Okay. So real, genuine happiness or subjective well-being is a balance of emotion. So in order to have true happiness, you have to have experienced negative emotions too. How do you know you're happy if you've never had a negative emotion? So it's usually linked to more positive feelings than negative feelings. So it relates to your life satisfaction. How satisfied do you feel with different areas of your life? How good or bad do you feel about ways that you want to improve your life or you've tried to improve? So happiness really is subjective to the individual. Happiness looks different for every single person who's here with us today. So we're really looking more at themes and less at a specific way of categorizing happiness. Let's see the next one. Living authentically, on the other hand, is a little different. Authenticity is when what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do are all in alignment. It's a sense of fulfillment that goes hand in hand with authenticity. So, for example, I was working with a young man about 3 years ago who had, was about 17, had pretty intense ADHD. And he was seeing me because his family was very concerned. What's this kid's future going to be? He hates school. He doesn't want to do what I want him to do. We want him to go to college. He doesn't want to. What kind of future is he going to have? And so we started meeting. And the first thing he said is, I don't want to do anything that my parents want me to do. I said, okay. I don't want to go to school. I don't like school. Okay, so what's the plan? Like, we can't just not do anything forever. And he said, I want to work with my hands. I like working with my hands. I like taking things apart. I like doing those things that are meaningful to me that don't involve a college campus. Okay, so we explored that a lot more and looked at what direction would be most appropriate for him. And in fact, he elected not to go to college. And his parents were initially, I would say, probably pretty unhappy. Instead, he went to professional school. He became a mechanic. And I just got an email from him about 4 months ago with a picture of him and a Formula One race car, because now he's on tour with a racing team all over Europe, doing exactly what he wanted to do and exactly what his parents wanted him to do. They wanted him to be safe. They wanted him to have a career. They wanted him to be able to take care of himself. So by allowing him to live his authentic life, everybody turned out to be happy. Everyone was in a good place. And I am still waiting for my plane ticket and a ticket to the next race. So if you're out there, please, you know how to find me. But that's what living an authentic life looks like. It looks like what your words, your feelings, your thoughts, and your actions are all aligned together. Let's see what's next. Unpacking your inner narrative shapes how you feel. So for a lot of people, they're like, what is an inner narrative? An inner narrative can be described as the internal voice that narrates our feelings or our actions or our motivations. It is the voice that knows everything about you. There's only one person on our entire planet who knows everything about you. All of the good stuff, all of the bad stuff, all the secrets, all the gossip. You're the one who knows everything about you. And sometimes that internal voice, that internal narrative, isn't always as helpful as it could be. I was working with a young woman who had pretty intense depression and was constantly sort of focused on, I'm never going to be anything, I can't do anything, I'm such a loser, all of these things. To which I said, but you got out of bed today. Well, yeah, I got out of bed, big deal, that's not a big accomplishment. I was like, well, you got dressed? Heather, of course I got dressed, I'm not walking around naked. Okay, great. You found your way to my office, whether that was in an Uber, on a bus, in a car, a flying pony. I don't know how you got here, but you got here. And so by refuting some of the negative self-talk that you're such a loser, you can't do anything, this is why you are the way you are, oftentimes it's my job to kind of refute that, to question back. Is that really true? Is it true that you're a loser? You got up, you got out of bed, you came to therapy. Like, who does that? So the inner narratives that we tell ourselves sometimes are awesome, and sometimes they're a little bit warped, and you need to kind of work with someone on how to change that. For kids, for younger kids, talking about an inner narrative is kind of an abstract concept, right? Because the first thing kids think is, wait, someone's going to be talking in my head? No. But your inner narrative can also look like physical symptoms. Like sometimes when you get really nervous and you get butterflies in your stomach, or you're around a certain person or a certain place and you start to feel kind of icky, or your hair stands on end. Those are all ways of your inner self talking to you. Does not have to be an internal monologue. Lots of people don't think that way. But it's really important that we listen to our inner selves and then refute those things that aren't really true or aren't healthy. Go to the next one. Oh, know your feelings. And defining your emotional wants, needs, and desires. So again, in a therapeutic practice, we're looking at how do emotional needs get met. So for lots of you who are teachers or practitioners, I know you're looking at this and you're like, oh, it's Maslow again. It is Maslow again, my good buddy. And what we're looking at in his sort of motivational model is how do we get our needs met? So initially, obviously, the very first needs that we need to get met are food, water, shelter, safety, security. And then we move up a little higher once we've had those needs met. And now we're looking for belongingness, wanting to be part of a group, wanting to be part of a family, wanting to be a little bit more outside of myself. And then as we get higher and higher, now we're getting toward esteem needs and eventually what Maslow is calling self-actualization, which is exactly the same as authenticity. It's being able to live your life in alignment with your own thoughts and beliefs. So sometimes this can be kind of a hard thing, I think sometimes even for parents to understand. So there have been definitely times where we take out the little pyramid and let's diagram it together and try to figure out where the holes are in our needs so that we can fill them so that we can, again, reach the top of that pyramid, which is authenticity. Let's look at the next one. There are 9 basic emotional needs. Certainly, there are plenty more, but for the purposes of today, we'll talk about 9 of them. And I'm not going to tell you each and every one of them because you're all brilliant people and we'd be here all day. So instead, I'm just going to pick a few. So volition. In order to feel fulfilled, we need to feel like we have the power to exist autonomously and direct our own lives. That's a big one for teenagers because they're reaching that point where they feel like they're more like adults, but they still have all of the needs of a child. So how can we shift those things and kind of mold them together so that your teen feels like they do have a voice in their lives, but that doesn't mean that they're running the whole show. So that might be having real frank conversations. That might be setting boundaries like, hey, yes, you are 17. Yes, you can go to the prom. That's great. No, you cannot come home at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's just the way it is. But by giving a young person at least a voice in some of those decisions, they take ownership of that then. I can't screw up because I agreed that I'd be home from prom by 1 o'clock. And so by validating some of those emotions, you're building connections with your children in a way that is completely different, probably, than any other connection you have with them. The other one I wanted to talk about was privacy, which is really the mental and emotional well-being required for us to have enough space to reflect on our own experiences. Again, I think when adolescents reach a certain point, I want to tell my mom and dad everything switch gets flipped, and now they want to do their own thing, and it's kind of like you're chasing after them. But they need space. They need space and privacy to make decisions on their own. Now, am I saying to give your child unfettered access to the internet and God only knows what else? No, of course not. But giving them, again, a little bit of that autonomy, a little bit of that privacy is enormously important. I would say also, if you have a child who is neurodivergent, and I definitely fit that category too, more sensitive people need more time to process stimulation. They need more time to kind of regroup after a big family event, to regroup after graduation, whatever that looks like. And so they need the privacy to be able to say, I need just to go sit on my own for a little bit and I'll be back and everything's fine, but I need my own space. So it's important that we enforce that yes, you can have your own space as long as you're being safe. I want you to feel like you can ask for breaks or ask to be safe. And I'm a team. We're a team. When you're ready to come back, you let me know. And I think the last one we'll talk about is a sense of achievement. In order to maintain our self-esteem, we need to have a sense that we are accomplishing things of value. And when I say accomplishing things of value, I don't mean dollars and cents. I don't mean grades. I don't mean any of that. I mean whatever is valuable to that individual. I do a lot of therapeutic art in session. We do a lot of music, physical movement, all of those things. Now, I will tell you all that I am neither a musician, a dancer, or an artist, but I love all those things. So we definitely incorporate those into our sessions. But it's amazing when you're working with kids who will say, I'm not an artist, I suck. And we sit down and they see that maybe I really do suck, so they already know they're better than me. But when we start working, there's so many other things that come out of those interactions. When your teen is not focused and having to look directly in your face to tell you something, but rather the two of you are doing something else, it's much easier for you to have those conversations because some of those walls are kind of down. You're in a creative space. So a sense of achievement, whatever that looks like for whomever that may be, is a really important emotional need for everybody, but certainly for kids. Let's see the next one. So, what you think really does shape how you feel. We talked a moment ago about sort of the inner narrative and what that looks like. So what we think and that inner narrative definitely shapes how we feel, how we emote, and our mood. So we're looking at a cute little graphic here. It's a three-system model of emotions with the idea that the majority of emotions fall into one of these three circles. Either they are emotions about drive, that could be excitement, that could be recognizing the potential for something really good to happen. That may be achievement focused, it may be wanting to pursue something. And then we look at the soothing circle. Those are all feelings that make us feel better when we're stressed out, make us feel better when we're sad. And then the last circle is really looking at what are the threats to our emotions. Anger, anxiety, all of those things can impact our day-to-day functioning and definitely shape our mood and how we deal with other people. When all of those little circles are all in balance, you get what we're looking at on the right side, which is the truth is there are times where things don't go your way, and you will definitely feel those threat emotions. As long as you're able to use those emotions to influence either the soothing or the drive area, then your mood stays pretty stable. Sometimes what we see, particularly with a family system where there's trauma, is the threat is so much larger than the other two bubbles that it's like being in a constant state of uncertainty, a constant state of anxiety. So in therapy, what we look for is we look how can we decrease some of those feelings of threats while increasing the ability to self-soothe ourselves and to really drive where it is that we want this family to go. So again, your mood and your emotions are very much tied. How you choose to express those emotions are very much tied. Everybody gets mad. Everybody gets frustrated. Everybody feels sad. It's your response to those emotions and how you choose to deal with them that impacts not only your individual self, but those people around you. See the next one. All right. This is the one that when I work with clients, no one ever wants to talk to me about because it's really hard for folks to focus on themselves, particularly if you are a parent or in a helping profession. So much of your life is focused on somebody else, something else, my students, my clients, my kids, that it's really hard to take time for yourself. I have to tell you, there is nothing better than sleep. I love to sleep. I'm wide awake right now, but I love to sleep. Sleep is so important for a variety of reasons. The first one being when you're asleep, that's the only time that your body has the ability to recover itself, to fix itself. So when you're not getting enough sleep, you're not giving your body enough time to kind of recover. Relaxation is also enormously popular for some people. I have a client who loves meditation. That's her go-to when she's feeling stressed out. But relaxation can look like a lot of different things. Again, I love art. So for me, creation is a relaxing activity. Now I will tell you, I get messy and all that good stuff, but it's still a relaxing kind of activity. For some people, and especially teens, just listening to music. I just want to put my earbuds in and listen to music, and I need you just to like leave me alone for half an hour. Whatever that looks like for you, it's important that you give yourself a space and a time so that you can decompress, so that you can devote your attention just to yourself. And it doesn't have anything to do with your children, your boss, your car payment, none of that. It's all about you. Oftentimes when I meet with clients, my favorite question at the end of a session, and usually they look at me and they're like, is what are you going to do now, between now and when I see you next, that is completely and solely for you? It's not for your kids, it's not for your job, it's not for your family, it's just for you. And for a lot of people, it's hard to come up with something that's just for me. Wait, no, I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I'm a this, something that's just for you. And those are the opportunities that you have to really care for your mind and your body. And obviously exercise, we all know that's super important. Not only does it help control physical symptoms and different disorders, but it improves our mental health and our mood. There's something to be said for just being out in the fresh air, just being in the sunshine. Sometimes I work with clients who, again, are dealing with depression. And the first thing I say when I'm like, let's go outside is, I don't have any energy. I don't want to walk anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do that. Okay, can we compromise? And can we just sit down outside? We're not doing anything. We're not walking anywhere. We're not going anywhere. But would you just indulge me and let's sit outside? And usually they will indulge me because they're wonderful people. But as we continue to work on that, we expand that. Can we go for a walk while we meet together? Could we do a virtual session, and if you're on your treadmill, I'll be on my treadmill too. Whatever that looks like to encourage somebody to become more physically active definitely has positive impacts on their mental health. That's just kind of a given. Everybody feels better when you work out. You've got all of those wonderful endorphins running through your body. Your brain is being showered with all kinds of wonderful feel-good, neurotransmitters. There's not a downside to exercise. And that looks different for different people, and that's okay too. If there's some issues with accessibility, maybe you're working with somebody, or you are somebody who has mobility challenges. Going to a regular yoga class isn't going to work for somebody who has some pretty major mobility challenges. However, there are lots of practitioners out there that do offer even virtual accessible activities. So no one should be left out. There's something for everyone here. And sometimes it takes trying a couple different things till you find the sweet spot of what caring for yourself feels good. Let's see the next one. Okay. Let's get real. Sometimes we have relationships that bring you a tremendous amount of energy. And sometimes we have relationships where after you see someone, I have a really good friend, one of my favorite people on our planet. I have a ton of fun when I'm with her. The moment I leave, I am exhausted. I have no more to give. The energy is gone. I kind of deflate like a giant blow-up doll, I guess. So really look at who brings you energy and who depletes you. Now, am I saying you can't be friends with someone that depletes you? Of course not. But be aware enough to know that, hey, if I'm doing this activity, meeting this person, doing this thing that I know is going to drain me, you need to have a plan for how to replenish. And parents, I feel for you. What's it like to be a parent? Imagine you're straining to carry every single grocery bag and someone tosses you a priceless vase. And also the kitchen is on fire. I get it. There is so much going on all the time, everywhere. And depending on how old your children are, how many children you have, what their needs may be, it's really hard to find a moment just for yourself. The reality is, though, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give somebody something that you don't have yourself. Sort of like on an airplane, they always tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on your child. So it's important for parents to look at, how can I give myself a little bit of relief? How can I help myself not feel so drained, not feel so irritated? Because let's be honest, if you are empty and your kids who don't know that are asking all kinds of questions, want to go 20 places, need 13 things for a school project tomorrow, and that they forgot to tell you about, the likelihood of you having a positive interaction with them is pretty slim. So rather than, and then later you feel like a bad person. Wow, I really shouldn't have yelled, or man, I should have figured that out sooner. So rather than getting to that point, let's look at ways that you can give yourself a breather, even if it's only 10 minutes, so that you're able to be there and present for your kids. Let's see what's next. And the truth is, sometimes it takes someone else in our lives to help us realize we're struggling. Someone who's not emotionally involved, someone who's not a cousin, a sister, a best friend, a boss, any of those folks, but someone who has no emotional investment in your life beyond wanting you to be successful. So when I look at this graphic, I always think about how when clients come in, you have so much going on, so many different things happening all at the same time. And it's my job to kind of start unwinding those things, detangling them. Let's figure out where those things come from, why they're here, and how we can benefit yourself, your family, whatever your goals are, in the most positive way possible. Which means that sometimes going to therapy is okay. Therapy is a wonderful space for you to be you without any judgment. And again, Lumina has really curated a bunch of amazing people who all do different things. I love art. That's my jam. That doesn't mean that everybody else does. That doesn't mean that what I do is less than or what they do is more. It means that we serve the clients that we feel we're best able to serve. We match our clients with a therapist that we feel can meet their needs. So if you are in a place where you realize, hey, I need to call some help in, I can't do this on my own, a therapist is a great solution. And if you decide to come visit us at Lumina, I can't wait to meet you. And you will definitely find someone who can meet your needs in the way that you need those needs met. So thank you, all of my beautiful, wonderful lotuses out there, for taking this journey with me. I know we might have some questions. I'm happy to try to answer questions for you. Let's see what's next.
Thank you, Heather. That was fantastic, and I'm glad. I hope that you consider me also one of your lotuses.
Yes, I do, and one of my colleagues at Lumina. The gift that keeps on giving.
Indeed, indeed. And we are going to take some questions. I do want to remind folks of a couple of things before we take some questions and start winding down. The first is that this webcast will be available at some recent point after we're finished at www.thehelpgroup.org/webcasts. And there you will also find all of those other ones that I mentioned at the beginning as well. When you click on those links, they're going to take you to our YouTube page. And if you watch any of those videos from there, you'll have the opportunity to use the closed captioning function that YouTube allows. And you also can select a number of different languages that YouTube has enabled. So if you do have a client or a parent, or you yourself would rather view in a different language, you're able to select that on the YouTube channel. So that's all good news. Okay, Heather, there were a number of questions that came in. We have a little time before we need to wrap up, so I will start with a few that came here. And again, everybody, we know that we can't get to everyone's questions, so if there are salient questions that are out there that a lot of people looked for or asked, we will make sure that we get those answers to you. So this question was asked in a number of different ways, but I'll choose this person's way of putting it, Heather. So it's, how can I provide this type of therapy to students when I am not in a positive space myself?
That is a wonderful question. I'm not sure who asked that, but it's a beautiful question. So a couple of things. One is, I think everyone needs to look at what do I need to do to be in a positive space? Being an educator, being a teacher is an incredibly difficult job. There are so many moving parts, and you have living, breathing humans that are relying on you for things. And so it's really easy to get sucked into this sort of mindset of, I don't like this, I'm not happy. And sometimes that translates to your kids. So if you want to be positive and present for your students, then it's important to also work on how you can be positive and present for yourself. Again, it's sort of, you can't heal other people if you're unhealed. So what I would say is, look at things that bring you joy, whether that's at work, at home, wherever that may be. And start to increase those things that make you feel good as a person, because it changes your outlook on everything else. Is that a magic pill and you can do it 2 times and it'll fix it? Of course not. It's something that has to be cultivated over time. But I would say you have to give to yourself first before you can give to your students. The other thing is, it's far more authentic if you can actually say to your kids, I know sometimes stuff doesn't feel good. This is what I do when I don't feel good. Do you want to try it? So again, it's about being able to take care of yourself first so that you are the best possible person to be able to take care of your students. You want to add anything, Jason, or did that cover it?
I was going to say that, well, I'm going to throw something back to you. I was going to say that I said it was asked a number of ways, and the way that I just gave it to you sounded like it was a therapist asking that question, but I can tell that it's also being asked by parents, and they're asking it more in the context of, in the heat of the moment, how do I contain myself? How do I make sure that, well, is it a mistake if I don't? I'm seeing that kind of question as well.
Okay, so what I would say is, it's okay to say you need a break. Obviously, if it's something eminently dangerous, you can't say I need a break while you're going 65 miles an hour down the freeway. But it's okay in the heat of the moment to say, I'm going to be back. And part of why it's a really good idea to take a break is because you're teaching your kids to do that too. Kids learn by what they see every day. They learn by watching us. So if we're able to kind of modulate our own emotion in the moment, they're learning that by watching you. So for some people, it may be like, you know what? I need a break. I'm going to walk over. I'm not saying leave the house, although I'm sure my parents definitely wanted to leave the house because I was a pain, but I'm not saying leave the house. But what I am saying is walk away for a moment, whether that's walk into the kitchen and get a glass of water, whether that's go use the restroom, and then while you're in there, do a 2-minute sort of check-in with yourself and your body. You have to take care of yourself first, and your kids are learning how to take care of themselves by watching you. So it's okay to say that you need a break. I think sometimes parents feel like they have to be perfect because they're the example for their kids. And oh my God, if I do it wrong, are they going to be horribly screwed up forever? No. They're not going to be horribly screwed up forever if you say to them, you know what, this conversation is getting a bit out of hand, and I think we need to take a break. Why don't we come back here and you decide the amount of time, and we can try again. But it's okay to take a break. It's okay to say, this is not going the direction I want it to, and I feel like I'm getting to a point where I'm going to say or do something I will regret later. So just take it off the table.
I'll add a little bit to that. I'll say that if that is a goal that you have, that you're trying to make sure that you are contained and not losing your cool when you're dealing with an issue, is that first is to realize that it is an intentional process and that you have to start trying, and that it will take practice, and you will not be good at it tomorrow just because you heard my answer and Heather's answer. And it will take practice, and it will need to be an intentional approach.
And your kids will test you. Okay, well, that happened last time we were in an argument, but I wonder if that'll happen this time. So I think consistency is also really important. To respond in a consistent way sets up a structure for your kids to know what the boundaries are, what the limits are, and sort of how far they can push the envelope.
So we might have time maybe for two more. So I'm looking through here. How do you recommend implementing a positive psychological approach with individuals with behavior issues?
So if we're using the paradigm of positive psychology to address behavior issues, then we're focused more on the success and less on the issue, if that makes sense. So rather than giving a child who has some behavior challenges a huge list of rules that they have to follow, which immediately they will then challenge every single one of them, it may be something as easy as, oh, I need you to make the rules with me, because you can't just do whatever you want. So let's talk about what those rules are. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about my client who wanted to go to prom and come home at 4 o'clock in the morning. And mom and dad were like, no, that's not a thing. But if you want to go to prom, these are sort of the parameters that you can function within. And they agreed on a return time. Once they agreed on that return time, if he was late, then he automatically had to accept the consequences of that decision, because he made the schedule. He's the one who said, I will be back at midnight. And if he rolled in at 12:30, sorry about your luck, pal, but we agreed that it was 12 o'clock. So now we discussed the consequences for you not following directions. So I would shift it from focusing on all of the things that someone's not doing the right way and start celebrating those things that they are doing the right way. And I know that sometimes I was a difficult teenager. I know that there are some times where you're like, well, I can't come up with one thing this kid is doing right. I promise you there is one. And that's the beauty of having therapy as an option. Sometimes, again, talking to an outside person who's not emotionally involved, who isn't going to show up in your house during an argument. You're not going to run into that person necessarily at the grocery store. They're removed enough that they can have those types of conversations. So again, through sort of the paradigm of positive psychology, it would be building up the good things so that we can then sort of work on the things that aren't working and add them to the good list, if that makes sense.
And let me ask one last question. I just like this. I think it's a good way to wrap up, because in some of the questions and a lot of the content, we talked a lot about parents. We talked a little bit about therapists and what they can do. This question is, how can educators be incorporated into the therapeutic approach with adolescents and families? So how can we bring teachers into this team? It seems, Heather, that more than ever, we need the village. It takes a village. We need the village. So how can we bring educators into this environment, and particularly with thinking about things in a positive psychological sense? How do we bring teachers into this approach?
Well, I think, again, by sort of conceptualizing what's going on in the framework of positivity, as a therapist, I want to hear what the teacher sees, because you see something completely different than I see in my office. I want to include parents. Tell me what you see at home, because I know you see something different than what I see in the office and what the teacher sees in class. So I think it has to be more of a collaborative effort. And that really is, in a lot of ways, has to come from a parent and a therapist who want to link up and become a team and add in a new team member. Educators have so much valuable information to share with us. Again, they see the kids all day long. So for myself, I always like to incorporate as many extra people who have access to this person as possible, so that as a group, we can help this person achieve what their goals are. We can help support them. Also, we can talk about what are the boundaries. I know for teachers, you have this wonderful behavior management thing that works beautifully in your classroom and everybody's doing great. And then we have a long weekend and everybody goes home. And then you come back on a Tuesday and it's like you're starting all over again, because nothing that was happening last week while you were in class happened while they were gone. So I think it's also encouraging and bringing parents more in to be part of a team. It's not just one kid who has a challenge. It's not just one classroom, one professional. It's let's bring a group in and see how we can best serve this person.
Thank you so much, Heather. This has been a great topic, and we're glad that you joined us today. We have come to the end of our time today. I do want to remind everyone that this presentation has been recorded, and we will let you know when it's available to view and share with your colleagues and friends. If there are any questions that we're not able to get to, we will share some of those with all of you in a follow-up email as well. I do want to remind, because I have seen some questions, and I know Erica has been responding to some of them, but I want to remind everyone about our Lumina Counseling Center. And if you are interested in counseling services, please reach out to us at 818-779-5100. Our representative can provide you with a good match to one of our therapists. Also, please save the date for our next webcast, which will be on Tuesday, June 7th. If you have joined us for many webcasts, you will know that we have always had them on Wednesdays, but the next one's on Tuesday, June 7th. It will be at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and we will be presenting providing affirming therapeutic support to LGBTQAI youth and young adults. We will reach out to you more with further information as it becomes available. At the Help Group, we always endeavor to provide the best education to our students and to impart what we have learned about best practices to parents, other schools, and other communities. If you would like to learn more about our schools and our programs like Lumina, you may go to our website at www.thehelpgroup.org, or for Lumina at www.luminacounselingla.com. You may email our admissions department at admissions@thehelpgroup.org, or you may give us a call at 877-943-5747. You may also email me if you want. That's my first initial and last name, so jbolton@thehelpgroup.org. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your choosing to spend your valuable time with us today. We at the Help Group are here for you when you need us. Please hold on tight to the ones you love and reach out to those with whom you have lost touch. We need each other more than ever these days. Have a great rest of your day.